We are joined on the line by Brother Zaid Hamid from Pakistan this morning. He is from Brestex, which is a private and independent Pakistani think tank and defense analysis consulting group. Brother Zaid, Jazakumullah for your time. Welcome to Radio Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, habibi. Ahlan wa sahlan bikum.
Jazakumullah. Many are going to say that this is the US now buying its loyalty from Pakistan with aid packages like this one.
You see, basically what is happening is that they are not buying the loyalties of the Pakistanis. They are buying the loyalties of the leadership.
That's it.
The issue is that this leadership, the present government in Pakistan, is one of the most corrupt, incompetent government Pakistan has ever seen in its history. And just like the Karzai government in Kabul, this government absolutely has no capacity to deliver anything to anyone. And now, when the Americans are losing their war in Afghanistan, they are desperate that Pakistan should fight their war to recover them from the mess they have landed themselves into. And literally people actually say that Americans now want to fight to the last of Pakistanis. And the fact is, as you very rightly said, that the strings that would be attached with this would be multi-pronged. And one of the most strongest string attached with this package is that Pakistan should declare war on the Afghan resistance. And starting up from Jalaluddin Haqqani, then Gulbuddin Hekmatyar and Mullah Umar, what Pakistani military establishment has been doing is that they have been trying to ward off the insurgencies that have been sent into Pakistan from Afghanistan. But Pakistan has been careful not to antagonize or not to make the Afghan resistance hostile to the Pakistani state. Because Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and Baluchistan Liberation Army, the terrorist groups which are being funded and supplied from Afghanistan, are waging a war against the Pakistani state, and Pakistan army is already preoccupied with this. Also the fact that Pakistanis have suffered almost $20 billion losses in terms of wealth, property, damages, casualties, human losses, the military hardware that has been lost. And if you compare that figure with the peanut figures that the Americans are offering, it's not a compensation by any standard, but a bribe. And bribe also to the leadership. And this is something that Pakistani nation, the civil society now realizes. And now when Hillary Clinton came to Pakistan this time, we saw an unprecedented development that the ex-servicemen society, the civil society, and multiple groups, power groups in the civil society and media came together and presented a resolution to Hillary saying that our demands are not this aid and money that you're giving us, but our demands is that US should leave the region. US presence is part of the problem, not part of the solution, and Pakistanis can manage their own affairs. Pakistanis will manage their own water and security and economic issues if the Americans stop interfering into Pakistani national security and political affairs. So these are unprecedented developments, and the American government knows this now, that the tide, they have lost the war for the hearts and minds of the Pakistani people completely. The armed forces are now against them, the people, civil society is against them. It's only a threadbare holdings they have on this present government whom they are trying to sustain. And all these money that will be given to this government will not be used for water and development projects, but be siphoned off in corruption, as the record of this government is. So basically, nobody has any hope of any development from this package that Hillary has been offering.
Another question, Brother Zaid, that many would be asking, that the US itself is in trillions of dollars of debt. Where do they get this money from?
You see, simple. They print it. It's not even printed nowadays. It's just an electronic digital transfer. They simply say, we have transferred so much into your account. See, US is already running an overdraft. Chinese have been their bankers for years. All the wars that Americans are fighting all over the world are actually being financed by Chinese. And by buying the treasury bonds and paying the Americans supposed to pay them the interest for it. Now, the point is, American economy has collapsed. There's no doubt about this at home. And the explosion that you would hear would be overnight, would be sudden. Because we have seen the signs and the symptoms. Americans are spending almost $5 billion every month on sustaining their armies in Iraq and Afghanistan. They cannot do it any further. The losses, the number of Americans who have committed suicide has exceeded the number of American troops killed in action. The major differences between the US military leadership and the political leadership became very obvious just a few weeks back when General McChrystal was sacked. So even as far as the morale is concerned, as for the military strategy is concerned, as for the financing the war is concerned, US is now totally incapacitated. If their supply line go through Pakistan, and every day now we see their supply oil tankers being attacked somewhere in the country, and if this supply line is stopped, we can be very sure that Afghanistan will become the graveyard for another empire.
Now, the US wants Pakistan to disassociate itself from the Haqqani group. The first question is why, and the second question is how will Pakistan go about trying to achieve that?
You see, there are three major groups in Afghanistan who are resisting the American and NATO occupation. One of them is Mullah Umar group, other is Jalaluddin Haqqani's group, and the third group is of Gulbuddin Hekmatyar. Mullah Umar is primarily strong in the southern Helmand and Kandahar region. Jalaluddin Haqqani is strong in the eastern regions of Khost, Paktiya, Paktika, Lugar, Ningarhar, and around the southern tip of Kabul. And Hekmatyar group is stronger in Kunar, in northern areas, in Badakhshan, and Kunduz, and in northern Afghanistan. Now, Jalaluddin Haqqani is based, since not today, since the Soviet Afghanistan jihad era, since the 80s, Haqqani is based in North Waziristan. And he has his bases there, and those areas are areas where Pakistan Army has never ventured in the last 63 years. They were called federally administered tribal areas. Even for the last 200 years, even the British Empire could not enter into those areas. Now, this is the region where Americans want Pakistan to wage a war against the Haqqani network. Pakistanis have not done it, they will not do it. Now, the point is, basically what the American desire is, that Pakistan, when the Americans leave, Pakistan must not have any asset left in Afghanistan to exercise any influence. So before the Americans leave, they want Pakistan and Afghan resistance to be at war with each other. And this is a strategy. Pakistan is hedging their bets. Pakistan is resisting this American pressure simply because now everybody is seeing that Americans are going to leave, and everybody wants assets in Afghanistan so that they can control and influence the future geopolitics. So this is very understood game. Pakistanis will not be doing that. Pakistanis will not be fighting against Hekmatyar or Mullah Umar, despite the American displeasure. And the fact is that Americans have lost the war inside Afghanistan themselves. They have not lost the war just because Haqqani or some of his family members live in North Waziristan. Haqqani network is 99% based inside Afghanistan. Only the leadership, a few elements of leadership are in Pakistan, from tribal areas of North Waziristan. So, from a strategic point of view also, the contribution that the Pakistan army would play in the North Waziristan would be minimal. And it's the Americans and the NATO which have to do their own dirty job, which they don't want to do. Because that's the comical part is, that while they ask Pakistan to do more and not to have peace negotiations or peace deals with the Haqqani network or any other Afghan Mujahid network, they themselves are paying the Afghan resistance for protection. They are themselves paying Mullah Umar and Haqqani network for allowing the NATO containers and transport oil tankers to go through safely to the NATO forces. So while NATO pays to the resistance, they want Pakistan to have war with them. So this is something that Pakistanis are not amused and not buying it.
Now today the 9th International Conference on Afghanistan is taking place. What are your comments on this conference?
You see, if you do not include Pakistan, if you do not include Iran, if you do not take the opinion of these two strong neighbor countries, then all these conferences you do would remain meaningless. And if Pakistan is having a strategic dialogue with the Americans also. And interestingly, Pakistan Army has involved itself into those dialogues, insisted that the political government should include the issue of water disputes with India in the strategic dialogue with the Americans, because Army feels that Afghanistan, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, Army does not need anybody's involvement. Army can handle it themselves. But now, if there is going to be any strategic dialogue where Americans want to give any importance to Pakistan, they should actually be dealing with about the issues where the Indians are involved, with Indian presence in Afghanistan and Indian blockade of Pakistani rivers. So, this is how the Pakistani security establishment is seeing it. Pakistani political leadership is meaningless. They are only holding on to the power. They have no capability, no capacity. And under this, Americans are in panic, not just in Afghanistan, but also in Pakistan.
Finally, Brother Zaid, many are asking the question, and perhaps you can enlighten us, that with all its sophisticated technology and all the dollars at its disposal, to date, almost a decade later, how is it that America has still not been able to locate Osama bin Laden or Mullah bin Umar?
You see, as far as the war is concerned, anybody who has fought in Afghanistan knows that Afghanistan historically has been called the graveyard of empires. from their own times also, from the Soviet Union era, from the British era before that, they used the best technology of their time as well. But I have fought against the Soviet Union in the 80s as a young volunteer along with the Afghan Mujahideen. And Soviet Union at that time came with all the technology they had in the weapon system and the firepower. But they also had numbers, boots on ground. Soviet Union had more than 500,000 troops trying to contain Afghanistan, and they could not do it. The knights used to belong to the resistance. In Afghanistan, American and the NATO forces, along with the private military contractors, XP and Blackwater, they're not more than 150,000. And even the NATO is not involved in combat operations also. The basic fighting is being done by the British, Canadian and the American forces. The NATO is not involved in combat. So basically that reduces the combat troops to less than 75,000 troops. Now, with 75,000 troops, no matter what futuristic technology you bring, you cannot contain Afghanistan. And this is a hard lesson that the Americans are learning now. Because basically the terrain, the geography and the local population and their will to fight. The fact is that Afghanistan is at war for the last 30 years. The nerves of these people have become stronger. They can sustain war, action losses. American troops are committing suicide just by being under the threat all the time. Not even being attacked, under the threat of an attack, break down their nerves and start committing suicide. So, with this kind of morale, Taliban have a solid moral cause to defend their land, to liberate their land, to throw out the occupation. American troops, their morale, their armed forces don't see any reason for this war. They themselves see it's a useless war. They're only trying to protect one hill or another, one bunker or another, but then the Taliban pops up from some other direction. So in this environment, no army, no matter how technologically advanced it is, can fight. Army needs visible objectives. Armies need visible enemies. You can't fight phantom enemies with invisible objectives and then still hope and be an occupation force in a far-off land and then expect to win it. It doesn't happen in history. It never happened. Won't happen this time either.
Brother Zaid, Jazakumullah for your time. It was fascinating talking to you. Unfortunately, we're up to news and we'll talk again in the future, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair,